Okay, hello everyone. Very warm good morning to all the participants who are abroad on this for lecture. In this FIP program, and I am Dr. Rakesh Tomar. I am from King Fahad University of Petroleum and Minerals, Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and I'll be giving my lecture on scientific publishing in higher education. So before I start, I would like to convey my thanks, and deep sense of gratitude, to the college, the principal of the college, to Professor Lata, who's organizing this, event, and Dr. Shikha Chaudhary, who has facilitated, my lecture, for this program. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and this is really a great, a pleasure for me to be with all of you, and it's always a sense of a pride when we all the faculty members in higher education, we are together, and we discuss some topics. And I feel that when we talk about scientific publishing, especially when people who are involved in higher education, this is of great importance and immense value to all every one of us. Just before I start, I would like to first give an outline for my presentation. I'll be talking about like in general about publication in the first part. Then in second part will be on how you can prepare for the publication. Okay, and the third part will deal with how to write the manuscript. So that's very important, and that's what has been said, that all the scientists are basically authors. Then I will give some useful tips when you write the manuscript, and how you send it for publication to the journals. Then I'll be giving you some additional information about publication process, selection of the journals, and what care you should take in when you are writing a manuscript and sending it to journal for publication. And then in the end, I will talk about Web of Science journals. And we all know that nowadays, you have to either publish in the Web of Science journals or in the Scopus journals, or the UGC list, which has been provided according to the subjects. So let's come to the first part first. And this is a very famous proverb. Those who are in research in higher education, probably they know this. And this has been said that, if you are in higher education, right? If you have done your PhD and you are in higher education, then either you publish or you perish. So that's how the importance of publication is, in higher education. So it's very important for us to publish, and keep our research, continued. So in higher education, post PhD, what's important, because after you have completed your PhD, it is very important for you to continue with your research. Okay, it is very important that you get some funded research projects and publications, under your name, and that's what your resume is, post publications, right? And that's what the prospective, employers, they look for when you have been interviewed, and you are interviewed for any position from assistant to the professor level, right? And in many universities across the world, this is my experience, while traveling, to a large number of countries and dealing with institutions in higher education, we have seen, and like even when I have interviewed so many people, from across the globe, that research has almost 50% weightage, in your academic, promotions, we can say, or your advancement of your career. So, and in some institutes, even they can go a little beyond that also. So once you have PhD in higher education, the research is indispensable, and most of you will agree with me this, right? So therefore, when research has so much of importance, apart from your normal academic work, your teaching assignments, which are also equally important. So in research, the quality precedes quantity, and that you have to understand, and that is what my take, for this presentation. It has been again said that the one good paper is more than 100 obscure publications, and that is important. It is not important how many papers you publish. The importance is how good is your paper. Even if you have one paper, that one paper can give you, numerous citations. You may be having 100 publications, but if nobody cites those publications, nobody read those publications, then that research, will go, under the files, right? So if you do research, you publish, your intention is that people should read it, and then people should cite, your papers. And citation will only come when the research is, research has some meaning and value, to the reader. So that's very important for you to understand whenever we go for any publication. So the question comes, why do we publish? And the real reason is, basically when we, for the publication, is the exchange of ideas. Like we have to exchange, like I have some idea, I have, translated that idea into a form of a research. And now I have to exchange that idea. And for that, I have to publish, right? And then for more rapid scientific progress. So when you exchange your ideas, when you exchange your research through publications, then the scientific progress is quick and rapid. And it has been said that all scientists are authors, because, you have to write. You may have done, a good experiment, right? But at the end, you have to write that experiment. You have to write a report. You have to write a paper. And for that, we say that all scientists are authors, because how well you write your paper will decide where and how you are going to publish it. So why do we publish? Again, there's some reasons, for why we publish. The first is the practical reason. The practical reason is just because there are funding bodies, because your research has been funded by an agency, by a grant agency, right? There are researchers involved in your team. You are writing for a grant, as I said, and you have to, there are journals and there are publications, and you have to publish, in those journals. And that's the practical reason why do we publish, okay? If you look at this pictorial presentation, and you see here, there are grant agencies, there are funding agencies, academic institutions like universities, colleges, and other higher education institutions who basically hire or fund a research group. A research group consists of a principal investigator, right? He can be a professor, he can be associate professor, and then under him there can be co-investigators, they can be postdocs and PhD students. And they can be consultants. So this is a research team. Now they do research, and then their outcomes are published, in various journals. And publication is because there are readers to read your publication. So it costs. So there's a cost involved when you publish, and there's a cost involved when you read a paper also. It depends upon whether it's open access or it is not open access. So all these things, your publication journals also again influence the grant agencies. They influence your academic institutions, right? So if a faculty member has large number of publications, when you publish, this indirectly or this directly affect the rankings and the reputation for the academic institutions and the grant agencies who have funded those research groups, right? So another reason, while we just continuing with why do we publish the same topic, before you go for a publication, you have to measure the quality of the journal, right? And for that, we always go for the impact factor, right? So we calculate the impact factor, and that's why you see number of times, that when we go for publication, what's the impact factor of the journal? And the impact factor is calculated, by a simple formula which is on your screen. That the number of sites in, for example, I've given this example for 2019, 2 items published in 2018 plus 2017, and then divide total number of sites, total number of articles, published in 2018 and 2017. This is how we get the impact factor for a particular year. Now, so here there is a question which I want to just highlight here, that the impact factor measures what is measured actually. It measures the popularity of a science or a popularity of a topic, right? And the amount of scientists in those disciplines write, and publish. So this is what the impact factor measures. Now, if you look at the biomedical journals, which usually have a much higher impact factors than the engineering journals, and the science in both of, but it does not mean that normally we go with the impact factor. If impact factor is higher, we believe that journal is good and that science is good. But generally, if you see, there are other reasons also why impact factor of one particular journal or one particular study area is high. Because of the readership also. But it does not mean that the science in one is not good. The science in both of these fields are equally good, but the nature of the science dictates a different rate of publication, right? So the ISI impact factor, which is normally we call like a web of science nowadays. ISI is called as a web of science, that is Clarivate Analytics, and it is calculated from the monitoring of more than 1,000 journals. And the Scopus, which is another, very popular index, which many employers they look for, when they want to see your publications, and then they want to count your publications. The Scopus impact factor is calculated from monitoring of more than 16,000 journals. Now, the editorial process is basically, when you publish, you go for publication. It is normally a double-blind peer review process, right? So in this, the authors, they send a manuscript to the editor. Okay, and then editor, send it to the reviewers, and then reviewers send it back to the editors. And authors does not know who are the reviewers, and number of many times, even editor may not be knowing, the name. So it's a double-blind, process, which is normally very transparent and normally very rigorous. I'll be talking about the peer review process later on in my slides. Now, there is another important factor before we go for deep into the publications, the publishing timeline. So the publishing timeline is something which you have to look into it before you send any paper for publication to a specific journal. So how the process began? First, you submit your manuscript, right, to a journal. That's from where your timeline started. So you submit your manuscript, and as soon as you submit the manuscript, the journal, they assigned an editor to your manuscript. So once the manuscript is assigned to an editor, normally this process does not take much time. This can be finished, in 1 to 3 days, depending upon from journal to journal. And there are two things which happen at this stage. The first, there can be a rapid rejection, means you send a manuscript to a journal, editor is assigned, and editor sends back to you a rejection letter saying that your manuscript is not suitable for our journal, or it is not of the topic is not very much relevant and it is not written properly. So there can be many reasons, and your manuscript can be rejected, immediately, in the first step. And if it is accepted, at the editor level, then it is sent for a peer review process, which is a more rigorous process. So once your manuscript is sent to for a peer review, then the reviewers, they evaluate your manuscript, they read. Like I have the experience because I have reviewed more than 120 research papers as of now, which includes reviewing for Web of Science journals, for Scopus journals, and in different study areas. So what reviewers basically they do, they read, they evaluate your manuscript in a time frame given by the reviewer, to the reviewer by the journals. The time frame can range from 1 month to 2 months, depending upon the policy of that journal. And then the reviewer can accept your manuscript, they can reject your manuscript, or they can ask you to revise your manuscript. So if the reviewer asks you to revise the manuscript, then you have to revise it and send it again back to the reviewers, and then again reviewer look at it whether you have incorporated all the revisions or not. And if they feel it is not incorporated, then they can again send for second review, or they can simply reject it also. And then once it is accepted by the reviewer, generally then editors, they do accept if until unless the different reviewers have different recommendations, and then it is sent for publication. So there are, in this process, there are basically the editors, they have a lot of sources, they have the reviewers data so that they can send it to the relevant reviewers. And this timeline from submission to the publication, this can take around 3 to 12 months. yes, for some publications, it can take up to 3 to 12 months, and that again depend upon the journal, the quality of journals. The good journals normally they take long time to publish. So you have to think before you publish any journal, you have to understand that this could be a timeline, and accordingly you have to choose the journal. I have seen some of my papers which were published in Web of Science journals. It has I remember one paper took around 14 to 16 months for me, to get finally published in the paper, and finally it got published. So you have to remember certain things, certain important things also, that, and this is very important, that, only 1.5, this is a data, rough, approximate data, that only 1.5% of papers are accepted without revision. Like, for example, you send your manuscript to the editor of a journal, and the editor, sent to the reviewer, and it is accepted without any revision, without any comments. Then they say that in my experience, like, I have reviewed more than 120 to 40 papers roughly, and I have, I remember probably 1 or 2 papers I have accepted without any revision straight away. But and that's very, very low percentage. Otherwise, normally revisions are always there in your papers. And the rejection and revision, remember that rejection and revision are an integral to peer review process. So if your paper is rejected, this is not something that very negative for you. I always take rejections as a very positive, and so many papers of mine are rejected. I have, then more according to the reviewers' comment. You see, the rejection means you have got a free advice, from a qualified reviewer about your manuscript. So basically, it's just a free advice, and you are able to, review your manuscripts, and you can improve your manuscripts, on the basis of those reviewer. And whenever the reviewer, they reject your paper, they give time, 2 to 3, 4 hours, sometimes, a lot of time to write comments, and those comments are really precious. So rejection and revisions are integral to peer review process, and second reviews are not uncommon. So as I said, many times, the review, the revision is there, you revise, and you again send back, and then, you have been asked to again, revise your manuscript. The second reviews are not uncommon. And the peer review process, as I said, it's a positive process. Whether your manuscript is accepted or rejected, in either case, this process is a positive process, because this is, this eventually, help you to improve your manuscripts. And many times, like as a reviewer, this is my experience as a reviewer, when I read manuscripts, I have to do a lot of drill. And if I have to make any comment that this methodology is not appropriate, or the authors did not discuss something in the results, or the results, some things are missing. So we have to read, number of times, and before any reviewer make any comment on your manuscript, he has to make sure that, he is doing in a right way. So the peer review process is always a positive for the authors. Now let's come to the second part. This is, in general, we talk about how the publication, what's the initial general thing about publication. Now, how you should prepare for the publication. So what are the things which you should keep in mind before you start even, thinking about publication. So actually there are certain things which you see on the right panel of your screen, that you have to read. First of all, reading is very important. So you have to read, and read as much as possible. Then hot topics, then comes the experimental design. Then what do the journal editors want from you? Then you have to select an appropriate journal, and then there are ethical issues. So I'll be discussing all these topics one by one in detail. So first of all, before you start anything, there is an idea which comes to your mind, right? So you have to, the idea comes, okay, I have to do so and so research, okay? And then based on your idea, you select a journal. Okay, this is a journal which I am targeting to select, my research. So this is how the things should, you should not select this journal at the end stage. You should select the journal in the beginning of, when the idea comes to your mind. And then you should go to the journal website, and then you should read the previous issues of that journal, so that you understand what type of papers are published, what the journal is actually looking for, in the publications. And then, you write your first draft. Then you write your first draft, okay, for your manuscript. And remember, this is this step, it's very, very important. Believe me, sometimes we don't want to show our manuscripts to our friends. So don't show it to your friend, rather somebody who always appreciate you. You must send your first draft to a critic friend who can do a critique of your paper, because that critic friends are very important. Then they will find what are the shortcomings, in your manuscript, and that will help you to write your manuscript in a much better way. And once you send it to critic friend, then you can refine your draft. Then you should go for the checklist. Every journal has a checklist. See everything is done accordingly. Then go for a proofreading and submit your manuscript to the journal. So this is the whole process you have to do when you go for a publication. So the first thing is, as I said, in this process is read. Okay. So this is very important for you to know the background material, what is the background for your research and how you collect that material. So for that, you need to read broadly. A broad reading for number of papers is very essential. So reading is very important before you write any manuscript, and you have to give a good number of time, number of days, I would say, to read broadly. Then determine the key papers in your field. What are the key papers and important papers in the field of your study, and just shortlist them. And then see what is the current state of understanding about the area of your study, right? That's very important. And this is the last one, which is very important. This is what number of times as a reviewer also, I'll be giving you many examples, like, because since I review, so number of times I'll be talking about that when I review what I do, what things basically I'm doing. So this is what I ask them many times in the manuscript, to the authors, that are you able to identify the gap in the current knowledge? And that is what the research is, right? So you are trying to do a research because you see that there are previous research done in this area, and there are certain gaps in the knowledge, existing knowledge, and with your research, you're trying to fill those gaps. So you have to make sure that, try to make sure that there is a novelty in your study. And that's what many journals, they will ask you also. There's a question in many journals, and when they ask the reviewers, this is generally not known to the authors, but the reviewers, they have been asked to rate the manuscript on the basis of the novelty of the idea of that research paper. What's the new thing in your research? That's what the journals want, right? And what is a gap in the knowledge which you're trying to fill? If these two things are missing, then it becomes very difficult to justify the editors or the reviewers, to accept your manuscripts. So when you are trying to, search any topics or on a or do research any topics, you have to make sure that you fulfill this requirement. So reading also helps your writing. So when you're writing a manuscript, that reading gives a lot of, supporting hand, because the both sides of brain are essential, right? And they work in harmony with each other. So, and that's why reading and writing are very much connected to each other. As I said, reading and writing are linked to each other. So you have to read as often as possible. Okay, you have to discuss, when you read, some papers or the articles, or the papers, which is related to your field, you should then discuss with your colleagues. So discussion with the colleagues, again, helps you to generate more ideas, help to improvise your manuscript. So discussion is very, very important with your colleagues, and one should not shy away from doing that. Then because this will again assist you with the journal selection. When you do a lot of readings, then you can see which journal actually is appropriate for you, and which section of that journal probably may be appropriate for you for your publication. And also reading, when you do when you read a lot, when you read broadly, it provides you the ideas for your next manuscript. So because there is no end, right? If you publish one paper, it is not the an end of the story, right? So there is a next public. So we have to, in higher education, the publication is a continuous process. It is never-ending process. You have to continue a publication until you are in higher education. So your reading always helps you to provide ideas for your next manuscript. Now, the next is the hot topics. This is the second thing when you are preparing for your publication. So you have to look for the hot topics. What is the hot topics? What are the things are being discussed in your field, at present. So how to find the hot topics? How do you know which are the hot topics you have to pursue? So for that, you should look for the clues. Okay. So looking for the clues is very important. And how do you look for the clues? The first thing is the controversies. Like you should see, you can read what are the controversies at present in the field of your study, and are there any unexplained findings. Okay, so you have to see if there is something which is not explained, which remain unexplained till now. So that remain again hot topics. And then you have to read the editorials, okay, of the journals. They are very important. You see, many times it may not be possible for you to read the entire issue of particular journal, but you can always read the editorial. Editorials give you an idea of what's the important topics are going on at present, and you can read the commentaries in the journals. Even you can read the letters to the editors. So these three are again very important to understand what are the hot topics at present. Then the next is the literature searches. Of course, you can search a literature. Literature search can be done through various search engines. Those search engines are many according to the science you are following. It can be PubMed, right? If you are doing a research in basically biological sciences or medical sciences or life sciences, we can say then PubMed is a very credible search engine. Google Scholar, of course, is a very common, and you can get a lot of. And then Science Direct, and there can be many more. You can do for Web of Science, Scopus indexes. You can search. There's so many search engines through which you can search literature appropriate to the area of your field. Then what you should do is then expand your reading. Try to read similar and related fields, okay, in your area, okay, and talk to other scientists, right? What other scientists are doing. So they also give you many times the clues. The other scientists. Go to the local society meetings. They are very important. There also you get the clue for the hot topics. Go for the national conferences, go for the international congresses. They are very, very important again, to give, the clue for the hot topics. And these are the places actually, when these conferences, these society meetings, and these are the places, where the latest results are presented even before they are published, right? So that is something which we have to look for when we are searching for hot topics. The third is experimental design. Now, this is the heart of your, basically, your research, see what I'm talking right now, we are talking about how you can prepare for the publication. Still, we did not come to how to write the manuscript. So we are just, before that, you have to make certain things right, this is what we are trying to learn now. So the experimental design, so get your design right. If there is a fault, and many times, when I review the research paper, this is where I do a lot of comments, on the research papers. So if the design is faulty, then I will not even go to read your results. I will not even go to read your discussion parts and conclusion, because if your design is faulty, then it is going to affect your results. It's going to affect your conclusions, right? So that's very important. And so you have to clearly state what is your hypothesis, what is your research question. That's very critical for you to answer, right? And what are the objectives of your study? So you should be very clear in your mind, and objectives should be very clear, not ambiguous, and it should be clear to understand to the readers. Then what methods are appropriate for your research? That's again very important. Choose appropriate methodology. There's so many, study designs. And do you have the relevant resources to conduct your research? That's again important. Many times we start a research, and then at some point we reach that we could not find, enough resources to finish our experiment. And identify your controls. See what are the areas of your control in your research. Things which you can control, right? And accordingly, you have to then, choose your study. So you have to make sure that your sample size is large enough. Of course, in many times in some studies are such that you may not be able to get a large sample, but try to see that your sample size is large enough, see which statistical test you're going to do. And whenever you have a doubt about your statistical test, so you should always talk to a statistician. Don't shy away or harm. So always reconfirm that your test is appropriate for your research. Then does your study comply with the ethical requirements? That is again important. Ethical consideration, is it approved by the ethics committee of your university or institution? So does it follow all the norms, especially the Helsinki Declaration for the ethical approvals? Does it comply with it? And that many times we have to write in our research wherever the humans are involved in life sciences, especially that whether your research is fulfilling the ethical requirements. Then journal editors, what do they expect? When you send, of course, your manuscript, so the editors are the first one to whom your manuscript reach. So what they expect from you, you should know that they are expecting a good quality science from you, right? They are expecting original research from you. And they expect that the research area in which you have submitted your paper is active research area, and that research area has many citations, because they want, if your paper is not cited by people, then everything is linked to the progress of the journal, right? So if there's no citations, that again it will affect the impact factor of that journal. And editors will not choose a study area which may not have many citations. So it's very important, again, that you are doing research in an active area, and they always see that your research is clear. It is a very clear and concise writing. That's what the researchers look for.